Carving It Up is back tonight with a loaded show on tap, starting off with, of course, the Dallas Cowboys. And if you're a Cowboys fan watching this, I'm here to tell you, this is an intervention. This is an opportunity for you to turn in your Cowboys fan card, because after you hear what Jerry Jones just said recently about his business model with the Cowboys, it is okay. You can come to my side. I used to be a Cowboys fan, and I left. Get out while you can. No one will hold against you. Get to that in a few minutes. Matthew Stafford has some back issues. The Rams are holding him out of practice. Concerning potentially, but I actually think long-term for the duration of this season for LA, not that devastating when you look at the data. Talk about that in 15. Anthony Salas, who's a content associate at ESPN Films, worked on the brand new docuseries, 6-part docuseries, The Kingdom, which talks about the Kansas City Chiefs' pursuit of a three-peat last season. He's joining us in a half hour. Cannot wait to hear what he has to say about this doc. And at the end of today's show, Scottie Pippen's out of his mind when talking about the Golden State Warriors dynasty. And as a Warriors fan, I'm highly offended. We got a loaded show on tap, so let's drop the beat, baby. Here we go. We are rolling. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on YouTube, as well as any and everywhere that you get your favorite podcast. I am Bryson Carver. It's fantastic to be with you live on this Wednesday. We weren't live on Monday when I was able to interview RJ Ochoa, so shout out to him. That full interview, by the way, is on the YouTube channel. Uploaded it today. There's a few short clips on TikTok and Instagram, so feel free to check those out when you can. But right now, stay with us because we've got a jam-packed show on tap. Anthony Salas of ESPN Films, content associate, he worked on a brand new docuseries. It's called The Kingdom. Let's just go and put up the poster for it. The Kingdom, which is an ESPN original docuseries, premieres tomorrow on ESPN Plus and Disney Plus. He joins me in a half hour to discuss that, what kind of went into the process of following the Kansas City Chiefs in their historic push for a three-peat last season. Later on, Scottie Pippen. This is an old quote, but for some reason, maybe this is how the social media algorithm works for all of us. It came up in my feed, and I was irritated as heck about it. Something he said about the Golden State Warriors, saying they're not a dynasty, or weren't a dynasty, at least at the peak of their powers. He's out of his mind. Get to that in about an hour or so. Touch on just not the greatest news with the Los Angeles Rams regarding Matthew Stafford's health, but it's not as devastating as folks may think, and you can use recent seasons, at least I can, to back that up. So we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. But first, we're going to do something. So let's introduce who we're talking about, first of all, to start the show.
How about them Cowboys? Yeah!
It's the Dallas Cowboys, and they're going to lead a lot of shows as they tend to do during this football season. What we're going to do over the next few minutes is going to be very different than what we normally do on the show as it pertains to special segments, whether it's carving up the context, Bryson's best 10, the Vol View, if I were a bet man, anything. This is different. We're going to have an intervention. We're going to have an intervention on this show because the Cowboys have a documentary coming out on Netflix. They had the premiere a couple days ago. I think it's called The Gambler and His Cowboys, if I'm not mistaken, on Netflix. It's a documentary about Jerry Jones, him buying the Cowboys, their rise, their dynasty in the 90s. Again, typical Cowboys looking in the past. And Jerry Jones, if we have it here, was asked about his business model for the Dallas Cowboys, and he confirmed what all of us already knew. Take a listen.
I do believe if we're not being looked at, then I'll do my part to get us looked at. The Cowboys are a soap opera 365.
The training will begin
When it gets
momentarily.
I'll start.
Please take your seats.
So it's wonderful to have the great athletes, have the great players, but there's something more there. There's sizzle, there's emotion, and if you will, there's controversy. That controversy is good stuff in terms of keeping and having people's attention.
Well, there you have it. We've got it. So Cowboys fans, let's just sit for a moment. Let's have a discussion for a few minutes. This is one of the few segments I'm not talking to anyone else in the audience unless you're a Dallas Cowboys fan. Yeah, you. I'm talking to you. So that's one-on-one right here. I used to be in your shoes as recently as, 5 years ago. 2020 was 5 years ago. Can you believe that? COVID and all. What a crazy year. And I remember, man, I was one of them Weedham boys, guys. I think early on, this is before I started my show, I believed going into 2019 that the Dallas Cowboys were going to win the Super Bowl. And they disappointed me and all Cowboys Nation. They went 8-8, and Jason Garrett was fired. And then there was a long drawn-out process in regards to paying Dak Prescott. His contract expired. Cowboys franchise tag him, and they end up not giving him an extension in the offseason of 2020. 5 games into that season, he suffers the terrible ankle injury. He's out for the rest of the year, and I'm like, okay, that's it. I'm done. Because folks don't know this. I've been a Dak fan prior to him being a Cowboy at Mississippi State, just because I'm an SEC guy, go Vols, all of it. And I was very, very upset. And from that point on, I said, I will always pull for Dak. I'll never root for the Dallas Cowboys again if Dak Prescott is not part of their team. So if he's injured or someday, mercifully, is no longer on the Cowboys and doesn't have to suffer in the mediocrity that organization routinely produces for the last 3 decades, then I cannot pull for the team. And, my life has gotten better since then. It really has. And there are certain decisions that you have to make in order to move on from life. It's like if you've been in a relationship for a long time and it was kind of fun, kind of like a whirlwind romance, right? Kind of came out of nowhere. You're in that honeymoon stage, right? And it's all going well. But as time has gone on, as time has passed, it's not what it used to be. There's like a toxicity that comes with the relationship. And you have to make the hard decision to move on. And part of that looks like, if I can grab this here, here we go. Part of that involves things like this. If you have a Micah Parsons jersey, maybe an old Ezekiel Elliott jersey. If you're me and you have an old Jason Witten jersey, Jason Witten grew up not too far from where I live. Shout out to Witten. A Tony Romo jersey or anybody. Diggs, Dak, CeeDee Lamb. It's time for you to take this. And you don't have to go all Skip Bayless and throw it in the trash. But just put it off to the side. Put it on that hanger. Put it in the back of your closet. And say, you know what? There's a time that represents a special time in my life when there was a lot of hope and optimism for what that could be. But you get to the end of the line and you're like, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. And so Cowboys fans, take this from a former fan myself. I'm a Steelers fan now, so it's not all hunky-dory. But think about all of the great franchises. And we'll go through some of the list quickly, but think about like the Los Angeles Rams and that great ownership and Sean McVay and the great GM Les Snead and how they put together their roster. Think about teams like the Kansas City Chiefs. It would be a little bandwagony, but hey, listen, who didn't fall in love with the team at some point when they were at the top of their reign? We're going to talk Chiefs later with Anthony Salas, right? 4 championships, 3-1 in the last 5, 6, 7 years. They're in the midst of a dynasty. They got the best coach and quarterback in the world. Great GM, ownership, all of it. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers in recent years, right? Good ownership, but an outstanding front office that's put together contender year after year ever since Brady got there, even when Tom Brady left, a perennial contender. A team that Tom Brady was the greatest player in the history of their franchise, obviously, was a dynasty, maybe back on the come-up, the Patriot, the great ownership of the Kraft family. You got Mike Vrabel in the building. You got all these young players and all this optimism that New England can return to at least some semblance of what they once were. Even once great franchises like the Denver Broncos, right? Haven't won a Super Bowl or haven't won a playoff game in a decade, but you got Bo Nix and Sean Payton. And again, I keep going back to this. Great ownership. I would not advise you to become a Baltimore Ravens fan, but if you want to, I wouldn't blame you. Lamar and the coaching staff, and again, another front office and a great fan base and a functional organization that has been since its existence. Listen, it's rough now. But as a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, let me tell you, I do believe the organization wants to win. I think their philosophy at times is flawed, but I do think they want to win. And if you want to really wade into bandwagon territory, I certainly wouldn't advise this. But the Philadelphia Eagles have been well run for a long time now. There are worse calls you can make. And so when it's all said and done, look out for yourself. Look out for your mental health. Because Jerry Jones, you heard it in that clip. He told you it's not really about winning for him. The Cowboys are a soap opera. Jerry said it himself. He admitted it at the premiere of a documentary about the Dallas Cowboys, about the greats of Cowboys past and how, if it's getting a little stale, yeah, it's nice to have great players, but man, Cowboys just came out today. Shocker. Most valuable sports franchise in the world. Once again, Jerry's one heck of a businessman. We know this. We know he's one of the best marketers in the history of professional sports. And to his credit, he's gotten the Cowboys to that point. He set his grandchildren, great-great-great-grandchildren up for life. But at the end of the day, when you talk about this franchise, we have to, listen, let's take Jerry at his word. We have to stop discussing them as a football operation as if they're just one of 32. One of the other 32 teams in the league. We have to discuss them as, okay, they're like this, a side character in the film who creates a lot of drama, but like isn't central to the story, isn't like critical, all of these different things. And so that's who the Dallas Cowboys are. They're just here to stir the pot, as Jerry said. They're here to make the NFL even more interesting than it already is. But once we get to mid-January, late January, we're talking about the Eagles. We're talking about the Chiefs and the Bills and the Ravens and the Rams. Heck, recently you might even be talking about Washington with the way their organization has been trending lately. So again, I know it's hard. I know it's difficult. I know this is something different than what we've done on the show in years past. It's a completely foreign topic or a form of content that we've ever done. An intervention with you, the audience. But if you are a Dallas Cowboys fan watching this, know that I'm looking out for you. Because I was there. I've been there. It hurts. Doesn't mean once you leave, everything's all fixed. Doesn't mean all your problems go away. But boy, at least you could choose an organization whose number one sole intent is to hoist that beautiful Lombardi trophy every February. Jerry, I'd sure like to. I think winning would be amazing for him. If it were up to Jerry, he'd have it all. Attention and championships. He had it in the 90s. Once he fired one of the greatest coaches ever and the coach of the 90s Dynasty Cowboys, Jimmy Johnson, once he moved on from him, yeah, they won a Super Bowl in 1995 with Barry Switzer, but that was obviously Jimmy's team. They added primetime Deion Sanders. We know the story. And ever since then, it's been a carousel of coaches and quarterbacks and defensive coordinators and offensive lines and draft picks and free agents and yada, 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 yada. You can go up and down the list. You can blame Dak Prescott and Tony Romo. You can blame Mike McCarthy and Jason Garrett. You can go down the list. You can blame DeMarcus Ware or Micah Parsons or DeMarcus Lawrence or any of these guys. But there is and always has been one key constant, one common denominator for the Dallas Cowboys falling short for the last 30 years. And by Jerry's own words, it's not really a priority of theirs to win, or at least the top priority of theirs to win at the highest level. It's Mr. Jerry Jones, owner and operator of the Dallas Cowboys. Again, I maintain, as an owner, he's awesome. He's an outstanding owner, because an owner's job is in part to market the franchise, to bring in the cash. Boy, does Jerry do that better than anybody in the business, probably in sports. The problem is Jerry's also the general manager, and that's where I guess he falls short as an owner, because an owner's job is to hire a general manager. Well, he hired himself. He's not going to fire himself. He's going to be GM of the Cowboys for the rest of his life. We know this. And even when, Jerry Jones is 82 years old and none of us live forever, even when it's Stephen Jones' time to run the team, I don't know, Stephen, if you've seen those press bites over the years, I feel like he's almost influencing his dad at this point. Stephen's kind of cheap. He's kind of a cheap guy. Maybe he'll hire a new GM. Maybe that'll be the only difference. So Cowboys fans, if that's your one glimmer of hope, I don't begrudge you for keeping that. But as we sit here today, this organization is not going anywhere with that mentality, with what Jerry Jones is talking about. And so, yeah, I saw that. I'm like, well, that's validation. That's everything I needed when I left a few years ago. I'm still going to pull for Dak. Dak, you're still my guy. I really wish you hadn't signed that extension, because he would have gotten that money with a lot of teams out there. But I'm still going to pull for you, my man. Ride or die. But man, when your playing days in Dallas are done, sayonara, Dallas. And by the way, Cowboys fans are the best. Was one, know many, they're the best. They have a lot more, they're a lot tougher than me to continue to put up with this nonsense. But listen, this is your opportunity. This is me, Bryson Carver. This is me, the host of the Carving Up Podcast. This is me extending an invite to you, those that are listening or those that are looking me dead in the eye through that camera. It's okay to leave. It really is. You can choose anybody. Just don't put yourself through that. Don't continue to stay in the toxic relationship that's emotionally abusive. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. I'm sorry, I saw that. And again, we talked a lot of Cowboys, obviously, since I come back, and we'll continue to, because well, they're one of the biggest talking points of the National Football League, but it's just unbelievable what, maybe again, as folks get older, they tend to get more honest. We know this in our own personal lives. And I guess that's become the case with Jerry, where he's taking more shots at Micah Parsons. We talked about that stuff, talked about that with RJ Ochoa of Blogging the Boys on Monday. That segment's on the YouTube channel and all of the above. But maybe it's as simple as that again, because I theorized last Monday that all of this chaos with the Micah Parsons contract could be boiled down to, Jerry just doesn't have his fastball anymore. Like he like a lot of folks who get his age, if we're all fortunate enough to get to that point, he is declining. And maybe this could be a sign of that, So, and I know Emmitt Smith, one of the greatest running backs ever, and obviously the greatest Cowboy running back ever, he was talking at the premiere of the Netflix documentary. He said that, Jerry Jones wasn't one of the ones throwing and catching passes. And listen, Emmitt's going to be loyal to Jerry, loyal to the Cowboys. Same with Michael Irvin. I get that. I'm not begrudging them for that. Like we know Michael Irvin on TV for years was the ultimate cheerleader for the Cowboys. Emmitt Smith has been critical of Dak. He's been critical back when Zeke was there. He was critical at times of Zeke. Like, I don't hate on them at all for that, but there's an element of, like, you almost wish the Cowboys are so intent on hiring people that have a background in Dallas. The Lakers have been very similar to that over the years. You almost wish if they were going to hire one guy, it'd be Troy Aikman, because Troy will go on Fox and now on ESPN and just rip the Cowboys if the time calls for it. Troy keeps it real when it comes to Dallas, and we've played his sound bites over time. And so, yeah, it's man, I'm glad I left, and you are free to do so if you so choose. David Lawrence in the comments, he has a take. He says, Micah agreed on a deal with Jerry and shook on it. Then his greedy agent told him to ask for more. Here's why I disagree with that. And here's the bottom line of all of this is that obviously Mike has never negotiated a contract for it. Jerry has negotiated. He's the GM. It's untold how many contracts he's negotiated over his 36 years as the owner and operator of America's team. First of all, I would like to know what happened. I talked about this last week. I would like to know what happened in that meeting. I would like to know if Micah perceived it as like a casual, like, yeah, of course, like that sounds about right. But most players, unless you're like Lamar Jackson and want to represent yourself, most players don't know the particulars and the incentives and all the little tiny details that go into a contract. His agent does. By the way, his agent, Jerry, has multiple times, well prior to this, as my man RJ pointed out on Monday, has taken shots at Micah Parsons' agent. And so, like, that's going to continue to be a sticking point for Micah. He's like, okay, you're trying to do dirty business with me. And again, the handshake thing, what did they shake hands on? That's, again, was it kind of a casual, like, okay. So there we go. Again, I don't think you know what you're talking about. Okay, that's fine. Emmitt and Irvin both rip Dallas all the time. Yes, but Michael, and I love Michael Irvin. He hasn't been on television in a while. Michael Irvin's great on TV. How many mean, like, anytime the Cowboys win, he's out there going crazy. How about them Cowboys? Da-da-da. Emmitt's more reserved. Emmitt's a more reserved guy, generally speaking, obviously, than playmaker. But he's been more critical of players than he has been the organization. And I think that's kind of a similar thing with Michael Irvin, whereas Troy will call up players and the front office. And again, not hating on Michael or Emmitt for either of that, but that is the reality of kind of the perspective they decided to take on the franchise. And that's, what they've decided to do. Also, quickly before we move on to the Matthew Stafford stuff, this is pretty unfortunate news for the Browns and in particular this quarterback, that Shedeur Sanders, who hurt his oblique in practice, is unlikely to play in Saturday's preseason game against, I think they're playing the Eagles in that game. So Cleveland can't catch a break right now. Like the Kenny Pickett injury, which Kenny Pickett wasn't making the roster. We knew that. But Dylan Gabriel's hurt. I'm not sure Dylan Gabriel's an NFL quarterback. I believed in Oregon a lot last year. I picked Oregon to win the Natty last year. I thought Dylan Gabriel was this world beater. And now Shedeur, who his NFL stock is as in his brief time in the NFL, obviously, is as high as it's ever been. And now he's down to one more opportunity left in the preseason, assuming his oblique heals by then. So that's really unfortunate, because I think think we were all pretty impressed with what we saw from him and wanted to see him continue to grow and put himself in position to get that backup QB spot. But alas, it looks like he's injured. Let's shift to the Rams for a few minutes. Anthony Salas joins us in 10 to talk about the new Kansas City Chiefs documentary that he was a part of working at ESPN Films. Excited to have Anthony on. Wanted to discuss the Matthew Stafford situation with the LA Rams. So Stafford is out, or has been out, really all of training camp with this back issue. Again, I mentioned last week he's had to take epidural. Like, it's a whole situation. Stafford is not healthy to go in Rams practice. Like, we know he went and played in the preseason. Sean McVay was the originator of do not play in the preseason, but Stafford is out. So we are less than a month away from opening day in the National Football League, which is very, very exciting, but it's not. The Rams would like it to be maybe a couple more weeks away from now than it is. And so Stafford's out. The backup's Jimmy Garoppolo. And if you know anything about the show, you know, not a Jimmy G believer. Yeah, if Niners fans think I hate Brock Purdy, which couldn't be further from the truth. First of all, as a dude, I love Brock Purdy as a guy, as a leader, all of these different things. I love his story. Clearly, he was underdrafted as Mr. Irrelevant. He's more than outperformed those expectations. My mindset is those MVP level stats he put up in 2023 are not as indicative of him as they are of the support around him. And I think you saw that last season. I have him as a top 15-ish quarterback. I do not think his numbers would say, oh man, top 7, no question. I think it's utterly absurd because we've seen under less than ideal circumstances, he's not close to that player. Jimmy G, with that talent, was significantly worse than Brock Purdy. I've said for years, Jimmy G's a backup quarterback. He's a backup. And I mean, if you look at that Super Bowl run the Niners had in 2019, and even when you look at their NFC title game run in 2021, look at Jimmy G's numbers in those games. They are awful. Like awful. He was bad in all of them. And I mean, the Super Bowl against Kansas City, missed the throw to Emmanuel Sanders that could have won the game, the whole bit. Like, Jimmy G is an average at best backup quarterback. And so, but now he's the backup in LA, could start opening day for the Rams. The good news for Jimmy, the good news for Los Angeles, and the good news for Stafford long-term is that because Jimmy has Sean McVay and Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams and Kyron Williams and a good offensive line, good skill position players, it won't be close to the disaster it was for Jimmy in Vegas with the Raiders, with Josh McDaniels, who's a good OC, bad head coach, and Devontae Adams, who was still great, and that was it. That was, I mean, prior to not Darren Waller, think about old Raiders tight ends. That was prior to Brock Bowers getting there, the whole bit. The O-line wasn't good. Jimmy G can do what most backups can do. Keep your head above water. You may have a losing record by the time Stafford comes back. Again, we are assuming Stafford isn't ready for opening day because my mindset is if I'm the Los Angeles Rams, he's not hitting the field until he's 100% healthy. If that is a luxury that they're willing to, or a luxury that they have long-term for this season. Because this is for the Rams, they're one of the few teams in the league. The Eagles are in this position. The Chiefs are in this position. I would argue the Ravens are probably in this position. The Bills, it's a little nuanced because it feels like they kind of have to go through KC first. But a very short list of the seasons of failure if we do not win the Super Bowl. It's like the Chiefs have won 3. The Eagles have been to 2, won 1. So they're the defending champs. They're trying to go back to back, right? The Ravens have never been to 1. And maybe you could view it as, oh, this is a success. Lamar has gotten over his playoff demons, but they've gotten to an AFC title game. Like, they need to take that next step. They view it as a franchise, as talented as their roster is. The Rams are in that same spot. They won a Super Bowl 4 seasons ago. Stafford, this could be his last year, one of his last 2. Sean McVay, if you remember, couple of years ago, he was close to retirement. So we don't know what Sean McVay's long-term future is with LA. Devontae Adams is getting older. Puka's spectacular. So is Kyron Williams. So is some of the guys in that defense like Jared Verse, who I think is going to have a monster season. But it obviously means nothing if Matthew Stafford never takes any snaps for LA this season. And so the data would show you the Rams, even with Stafford healthy the last couple of seasons, kind of a history of getting off to slow starts. In large part, that's due to injury, especially last season when Puka was out and Cooper Kupp, who was replaced now with Devontae Adams, was out. But if you look at the last couple of years where the Rams made the playoffs, prior to the bye, Stafford was an average to bad quarterback. This is 2023. 8 touchdowns, 7 picks, 250-plus pass yards a game. Didn't even complete 60% of his throws, pass rating of 82, and he was 3-5. Like, that is average quarterback play at best. Second half of the year, after the bye in 2023, oh, he's excellent. 4-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, threw for 13 more pass yards a game, 65% completion, 104 rating, and a 6-1 record. And the Rams made the playoffs and came that close to beating Detroit in the playoff game in Stafford's return to play his old team. And then you can look at last year. Before the bye in 2024, again, the Rams were beat up like crazy, O-line receivers, but wasn't that good. 3 touchdowns, 3 picks in 5 games, not ideal. 247 yards, completion percentage is fine, passer rating is and a 1-4 record, you will not take that. And then after that, it was really good. 17 touchdowns, 5 picks. Pass yards per game went down, so did the completion, but the pass rating went up to 97, and the Rams were 9-2. And if you remember, Philadelphia Eagles dominated their way to the Super Bowl, right? Crushed the Packers, crushed the Commanders, crushed the back-to-back champion Chiefs. Oh, the Rams had them on the ropes. The Rams were down 13 with 4.5 minutes to go after the long Saquon run. And 4 minutes later, you're like, holy crap, they're in the red zone. They could win this game. And then Jalen Carter makes, I think, the biggest play of the Eagles postseason. Makes a play on Stafford, and the Eagles go on to survive that game. So obviously, if Stafford's gone, season's over for the Rams. It's done before it even began. But they can survive. Jimmy G's not the long-term man. We know this. But they can survive with Jimmy Garoppolo. If they're 3-5, I know the Niners' schedule is easy this year, but we know the history of injuries that franchise has had. In large part, I think some of that's due to the very physical nature of Kyle Shanahan's offensive system. They lost a couple of defensive starters in Dre Greenlaw and Talanoa Hufanga. So the Niners, I know a lot of people are buying in San Francisco this year, and I'm not saying that's even wrong. I very well may pick them to make the playoffs, may pick them to win the West, depending on what happens with the Stafford stuff. But do I think that by midseason they'll have created so much separation with LA that, all of a sudden they can't run them down to the division? I don't know. Seems very much on the board that they could still come back and beat San Francisco for the West. And so, I listen, it's not good news for the Rams with the Stafford injury, but I think in the spot they're at, as talented as their roster is, as important as going for a championship this year is, I think you got to hold Stafford out until, again, depending on what the situation is. I'm no doctor. I certainly don't have knowledge of what's going on behind closed doors. But if it's what I presume it is, which is something that kind of just needs rest long-term and is somewhat of an old man quarterback injury, so to speak, man, I'm sitting him as long as I can until I absolutely have to play him. And so that's, to me, the mindset that the Los Angeles Rams got to have. No question. And again, like, I'll make my predictions, obviously, in a few weeks. We'll do a prediction show. May have a guest on. We'll see what happens. But, yeah, not an ideal spot. The Rams did not want to be here with Stafford. They obviously want to have him getting some reps in with Devontae. We know he has a great connection with Puka Nacua, who's one of the great young receivers in the NFL. But that's where they're at today. All right, we'll be back in 1 minute. But when we come back, Anthony Salas, who is an ESPN content associate, ESPN Films content associate, he's joining the show to discuss ESPN Films' brand new 6-part docuseries. It is called The Kingdom, returning on Carving Up Live in just 1 minute. So stay tuned. Anthony Salas joins us after the break. Welcome back to Carving It Up. Appreciate everybody tuning in on this Wednesday. We've got a very special guest joining us. He was part of the SEC Storied documentary to talk about Chris Lofton, who is a legend at the University of Tennessee. He worked as an archival producer in that role. He is a part of now an ESPN docuseries called The Kingdom, which covers the Kansas City Chiefs' historic push for a three-peat in 2024. Premieres on Thursday on ESPN Plus and Disney Plus. And by the way, the first 2 episodes actually premiere on Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. So without further ado, let's bring him on. Anthony Salas is joining us on Carving It Up. Anthony, how are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's great to have you back on the show. Again, I mentioned it in the open, and I told you, off camera months ago, but the Vol for Life documentary was fantastic. But this is a whole different type of project. This is a docu-series, 6-part, and you were telling me just beforehand, like it was a far more condensed schedule in terms of putting it together because the events happened so recently. Talk about what went into that, what went into ESPN saying, hey, we want to cover Kansas City as they go for something that no one's ever done before.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing about the schedule is like when you're trying to tell a more timely story, right? And ESPN original series generally is a little bit more current, up to date versus when you're doing work for 30 for 30, where you're trying to get the entire scope of a historical event, essentially. A film generally from pre-production to development, pre-production, research, shooting, everything. You're looking on average, usually it takes around a year, maybe like 18 months. But from the time that I started on this project to the time that stuff kind of wrapped up, at least on my end, it was probably 6 months-ish, around there or less. So yeah, it was very condensed. And when it comes to trying to tell that story, I mean, the thing about a follow doc in general is like you just don't know where it's going to go, which is fun because you're actually in the moment there, right? Trying to cover a team or a player, and ideally they're going for history, right? That's what it's about. No team has ever won 3 Super Bowls in a row, so trying to figure out what it's like to be on that journey is something that's really exciting, to show that to the world, but also like, we know how it sort of ends, right? And how is that sort of dealt with? So, yeah, it's a riveting sort of series where we're able to work with NFL Films, who are fantastic partners, specifically as well on the 30 for 30 side. And then Words and Pictures, who's a production company that we work closely with. This docuseries is directed by Kristen Lapis, who I worked with on my first film here with ESPN. So very, very high talent, high bar, high standard for all the creatives around making this project.
Listen, I can't wait to see it. And again, we're recording this on a Sunday, but it's going to air during Wednesday's show. So those that are watching live, we appreciate you guys tuning in with Anthony Salas joining us. There's so many fantastic storylines with this Kansas City team. And I talked obviously a lot of Chiefs last year. And the thing that is, at least one of the things that fascinates me as a guy who loves and appreciates sports history is Mahomes' push to catch Tom Brady. Like that's kind of the big sort of overarching thing that we look at with this team. We know Brady's the greatest quarterback ever, but sort of my case has been, the idea that Mahomes can't catch him. Will he catch him? That remains to be seen, but can't is, I think, is a little bit overblown. We can actually show you some graphics. He's first all time in win percentage, pass rating, completion percentage in the playoffs, and he's second in yards per game, TD interception ratio, wins, total touchdowns, game-winning drives, fourth quarter comebacks, Super Bowl MVPs, Super Bowl appearances. He's tied for fourth in Super Bowl wins. Like, and by the way, the guy has not turned 30 yet. Like, this is a short span of time that he's accomplished what he's accomplished. Is that something that you guys talked about that maybe Mahomes himself maybe gave more insight on, is trying to chase the greatest quarterback ever, Tom Brady?
Well, I think I think that it's crazy because Mahomes has had a meteoric rise, right? Like no one has come in from the time as a starter to accomplish what he's accomplished in such a short span of time. And I think something that we looked at on a greater scale is like, what was the pace and outlook of this franchise before Pat Mahomes got here, right? Andy Reid was here a couple years long beforehand. Andy had his tenure with the Eagles where he had Donovan McNabb and all these guys and never was sort of able to get over the hump. He had Alex Smith, and it's kind of like there was a lot of those sort of same talks of like, is Alex the guy? Well, they just drafted this quarterback, Pat Mahomes, out of Texas Tech, who threw for 1 billion yards in college. And once they finally gave Mahomes the keys, it's kind of like, history sort of started to write itself. So I think it's the talk was more so focused on the Chiefs on a grander scale. But yeah, I mean, the quest that Pat has been on in a way, I don't know if he really wants to catch Tom Brady. I'm sure that it's like on his mind. It's one of those competitor things where I don't know if he'd say it, per se. But yeah, yeah, I guess that'd be my answer.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and it's like you said, like it's not. And by the way, like Mahomes and Brady actually have a pretty good relationships. Like it isn't like a rivalry sort of thing the way some people made it out to be. But like again, it is. I imagine something in the back of his head like that's kind of the big fish I'm trying to catch, and so we'll see again how that continues to progress. But you were talking to me before we started, and I was reading up on some of the promos for this documentary or this docuseries that you guys really touch on the history of the Kansas City Chiefs, going back to when they were, the Dallas Texans and when the late great Lamar Hunt founded the team. Do you guys sort of go deep in that history? Obviously, talk about guys, greats of Chiefs past, like the Lynn Dawsons of the world, the Tony Gonzalez's, the Derek Thomas. Is that something that, in terms of the founding, in terms of the history prior to Mahomes, and even prior to the Andy Reid era, is that something you guys kind of dive into in this docuseries?
Yeah, we try to give. We try to dive into the history as much as we can, right? When you're looking at any form of content, you're going to have, your sort of capped times, sort of capped resources, things to license, things to not, that sort of thing. So all that kind of factors in. When it comes to the history of the Chiefs, like the Chiefs are one of the foundational, teams for the NFL and the AFL, right? Lamar Hunt was extremely important to the development of professional football, as well as coining the phrase the Super Bowl, which we use now and have used for, 50, 60 plus years. So to go back and to dive into that history is something that's really important to give perspective to how the whole concept for all these sort of stories, like how do we get here, especially when you're like living with something directly in the moment, right? And so to go back and reflect on that history when we can, where it feels appropriate, is something that's really important, to sort of meld that glue between time, right? Which is something that we always try to do with each project.
And the funny thing about the Chiefs is that when you think about franchises that go through these long, championship droughts, like they won a Super Bowl and Super Bowl IV, I guess that was 1969, 1970, and they didn't win until Mahomes' first championship, 2019, 2020. We think about teams that go through these long stretches of not winning, and they're just, the lovable losers, like Chicago Cubs going 100 years without winning a World Series. Kansas City had some great runs in there. They had the Joe Montana years, again, like Tony Gonzalez. They had some great offenses, but the defenses couldn't get stops. They had a brutal no punt loss to Peyton Manning, the comeback by Andrew Luck. Like, there was a long string of, heartbreaking losses before they finally got over the top with Mahomes. One of the things that I found really compelling, and so I think one of the number one things I'm looking forward to this doc and seeing if, this is something you could divulge, some of the players talked about, is they won so many close games last year. Matter of fact, they're actually on a current NFL record streak, 17 straight one-score wins. And you think about the Isaiah Likely play. You think about blocking the kick against Denver, the Aiden O'Connell bobbled snap, like just finding ways to eke out these wins and get to 15-2 in the regular season. I theorized because a lot of folks chalked it up to luck. Oh, this team gets lucky every week. My theory was, listen, you win 2 straight Super Bowls. You're used to playing in January and February. Sometimes either maybe you're not ready to play in a November game against Carolina as you would be AFC Championship game against Buffalo or Baltimore. And there's sort of that fatigue, mental, physical fatigue that kicks in. Is that something that you guys kind of talked about? I imagine, Travis Kelce, who just finished his 12th year in the league, Andy Reid has coached in the league forever. Is that something that played into Kansas City's close wins? At least in your mind, do you think that's something that the Chiefs players and coaches and people involved divulged in this documentary?
Well, I think in my mind, one of the things that's often talked about a lot is, or not, well, it was talked about at the time, but people forget is like they've not really been healthy, throughout this period of time. You've had so many injuries, you've had signings that come in to try to booster and, sort of the team morale when sort of stuff like that happens. And then I'm sure there's fatigue, right? To reference another documentary, but when you're looking at The Last Dance and you have a team that goes deep into, they're playing 82 games and you're going deep into the playoffs each year. And, not saying that it's not as physical as football, but when you think about the physical aspect of football, each play, each down, and you're working through that for, 16, 17, 18 weeks plus, I mean, you're going to have such wear and tear. There's a reason, no fault to his own, but there's a reason why, Travis Kelce probably didn't look as good as he wanted to be, during
Sure.
some of those later runs because, your body just breaks down. Excited to see like what him and the team do this upcoming season, but it would be, erroneous to not think that that's not some factor within it. But also, if I was to speak like in the thoughts of an athlete, a win's a win. The pundits and like the studio shows and the people that are on television really care about like, oh, well, they won by 1 point. This isn't the team that we've seen in the past couple of years, right? But, that sort of goes into an interesting thought about narrative and how the narrative has changed from this team from when Pat took over versus what people look at them and think of them as now,
Well, you led me perfectly into what my next question was going to be, because in part because of the close wins, in part because there's always this with any dynasty, whether it's the Chiefs, whether it's my Golden State Warriors, the New England Patriots, you can just go further and further back. Oh, they get all the calls. Oh, the refs are favoring the team, whatever the case may be. And it feels like if you think about the time when Mahomes took over in 2018, I mean, comes in the league, there's 50 touchdowns. Like, who is this kid? Like, we knew he was talented at Texas Tech. We didn't think that this, as you detailed it, meteoric rise was going to occur. It goes from kind of the lovable upstart, high-flying, explosive offensive teams to, again, kind of some of these wins are they're barely breaking 20. Like, I don't think they broke 30 points until they beat Buffalo in the AFC title game. Like, all these factors, the whole official thing, like winning as often they did, they developed some sort of a villain complex, kind of out of nowhere. Like, it happened, feel like it kind of overnight. Is that something that is touched on? Because again, I was kind of skimming through what each episode was going to talk about. I can't wait to watch on Thursday. But is that something you guys discussed, and maybe the factors that led to that, or like kind of give us an insight into if that's a part of this docuseries?
Yeah. I mean, I pulled a lot of stuff on Chief hate, right? like how that, you said it earlier, right? They had a lot of struggle years. And, specifically some very peak bad struggle years in the early 2000s, like early mid 2000s. I mean, there was 1 year where they maybe won 2 games, 2, 3, 4 games. So they went from lovable losers in a way because they have all this history and very passionate friends. I got fans. I've got a lot of friends that are, diehard Chiefs fans and would ride and die for that team. And then they become essentially, you blink, right? They become the evil empire. And you have this lovable coach in Andy Reid. You have this dynamite kid in Patrick Mahomes, right? You have Travis Kelce, who's now dating a global superstar, for better or for worse, depending on how you look at it. And bring all these eyes onto the game. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of insane when you look at how optics have changed against them and trying to dive into that, right, from showing the development of this team and this franchise over the period of time to show like, hey, they were like a team that no one thought anything of. There was a blank slate with Mahomes that people were like, assuming off of Andy Reid's past, with the Eagles, that he wasn't going to do anything potentially. Like he's a Peyton Manning for a time,
Sure.
He's like a Peyton Manning of coaches, he's a great quarterbacks coach who will get you there, but not win the big game. And you get all these chips off the shoulder and exceed all expectations possible, not only for the Chiefs, but in many cases for a lot of teams and franchises in NFL history with what they've done. And now you just have people that hate for various reasons. People don't like winners, but also at the same time, like, there's so much stuff that's off the field that's like when it gets a little crazy, where it's like, Travis Kelce's dating Taylor Swift, great, they're showing shots of her at the games, and people are losing their minds, like, upset about this and that. And it's like, I think the bigger thing as well is, like, at the end of the day, it's sports and it's passionate, but these are also humans, right, that are just trying to do their jobs the best they can. So to see how a lot of public perception has flipped on them is something that I feel will be a very interesting driving point throughout the film and the series.
For sure. Well, and I think something too, you sort of hit on a really important point about Andy Reid, is that, and again, a lot of the negative perception towards the Chiefs is not really directed towards Reid at all. Like, everybody loves Andy Reid. But it's almost like, to a degree, when the public perception is you are what you are, and like you said, kind of lovable losers, and like, oh, the poor Chiefs, and then you exceed that, it's like, wait a minute, you got out of the box that I put you in for the longest time. Like, now, okay, I don't really know how to deal with this. I don't know how to handle this. And some of it is, we just had a 20-year run with the Patriots, and now we got to deal with Kansas City winning all the Super Bowls, and that's kind of contributed to it as well. Is because, and one more time, I want to go and put up the poster for this, because anytime you see a poster for a film or movie, like, those are the stars: Mahomes, Kelce, Chris Jones, Andy Reid. Is there anybody, again, those are kind of the four main characters, but is there any sort of supporting actors, if you will, that you think will stand out? Do you think that people kind of come away from thinking like, oh, that's really interesting? Like, I remember, for example, when The Last Dance came out during COVID, like, I'm a big Warriors fan, so I love Steve Kerr, but like, really kind of getting a deeper dive into Steve Kerr's story, is there anyone on this Kansas City team that there's a deeper dive in, a greater look at? Obviously, again, the lead actors are the lead actors, but somebody who you think is the audience will really kind of identify with?
I have to think about that. I don't know off the top of my head, to be honest. You will have, your surprise stars that are wild cards, like with the Hopkins trade, right?
Okay.
And with there being 6 episodes, I'm surprised if there may not be a little sneaky, lovable supporting cast here and there of a few other people. But yeah, like you said, a lot of core stuff that focuses on like a lot of those guys, right? You're gonna have a little bit of a dive into Andy Reid, which could be, depending on how old you are, a thing that you're not gonna know. There's gonna be a lot of stuff in there that you may not know about, right? This is a guy that's been through a lot personally, and for the people that love Andy Reid, I think that they'll love him even more after sort of getting through this docuseries.
For sure. No, listen, I can't wait to watch it. And I will say, this is sort of a quick question, then I'll get to the last thing I wanted to ask you. Because, listen, I like most people who live in the United States of America, live in a household that has Swifties in it. So I'm probably contractually obligated to ask. Any reference, any mention of the Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce relationship? Because it is one of the talking points of the NFL the last 2 years. Any sort of, not even a deep dive, because I think everyone kind of knows what they know, but like, just any like reference to it, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be shocking to get through 6 episodes, or even plot out 6 episodes and not at least have some mention, even if it's passing from PTI, whatever.
Yeah.
So that all the, like, at some point, every other show was talking about it. And that's like what happens when you date a global megastar, and like I said, for better, for not even for worse, because like they're in a relationship, but like, it's bringing eyes to people that would never watch football, like and it's they're tuning into games now.
Sure.
And I think that the growth of the game is something that's going to be really important. And so we can cut all that out, but essentially, yes.
Well, no, for sure. But like, I think it's, that's, and I talked about that when it was really a massive part of the NFL was that or massive part of the NFL storylines was that, listen, this is no one freaked out when Matthew McConaughey's on the sideline at Texas or Jack Nicholson at the Lakers game, and now everyone loses their minds over Taylor Swift for whatever reasons. I'm with you in the sense, like, it brought more eyeballs to the game. It adds any other extra storylines. That's what I love about dynasties. Like, you don't necessarily have to root for the team, but Star Wars is terrible if Darth Vader's not in it, right? Like, it's like you do need sort of that antagonist, if you will. And Kansas City, as we kind of talked about, has been that for the last few years. Last question I would ask you would probably be this: what would be your biggest plug? Because I feel like we talked about the vast majority of the sentiment towards the Chiefs does tend to be negative. What would be your sort of plug? Like, hey, like, give this a shot. I think you might feel a little bit differently about some of these characters once you get done with the series. What would be kind of your plug for the series?
My plug for the series is, we're diving into football. We're diving into the history. We're diving into the history of a franchise and this team and what they were trying to do, right? But at the core of everything is you're trying to strip the layers back to show people really, both from a sports perspective, the preparation and things that it takes week to week and stuff that this team went through. But also at the same time, it's like, these are humans, these are, like, a lot of people forget, like, everyone on these journeys. Like, when I watch docs, in a way, it's like, whether it's series or whatever it is, it's like, I look at, the journey that these people took from, like, kids having a dream to wanting to go play high school to now they're in college and, explode, like Mahomes at Texas Tech. And next thing you know, they're given their shot in the NFL that they've been waiting on for their whole life. And now they're able to go on this ride. And there's been that love-hate roller coaster that they've been on. And I hope that people can sort of just really get to know the characters. You don't have to love the characters, right? But just get to know the people that you're rooting against, That would be my plug.
That's fair enough. Anthony Salas, one ETSU buck to another. It's great to have you on the show once again, my man. Hopefully you can do it once again in the future. But definitely, once again, we'll put it up one more time. Check it out, The Kingdom, which premieres at the time that you guys are watching this. It actually premieres tomorrow on ESPN Plus, on Disney Plus. The Kingdom, an ESPN original docuseries covering the Kansas City Chiefs' historic push for a three-peat. More carving it up after the break. Welcome back to the show. Once again, a big thanks to Anthony Salas for joining us. Again, for the final time, we'll go and put this graphic up. The Kingdom, it premieres tomorrow, ESPN Plus and on Disney Plus. And actually, the first couple of episodes are going to be released tomorrow on ESPN, on cable television, at 9 p.m. Eastern and then at 10 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. So if you don't want to stream the show, set your DVR to it, whatever the case may be, check it out. I've seen the previews for it. I've seen some of the descriptions for each episode. I haven't seen the docuseries yet. I'll watch it when everyone else does, but very, very excited for everyone to see it. And shout out to Anthony. He's come on the show twice. Very, very nice to do that. He came on back in March to talk about Vol for Life, which was an SEC story doc he worked on, talking about Chris Lofton, who was a legend at the University of Tennessee playing men's basketball. So Anthony's worked on a number of projects. I think, was it the, I should remember this, the Baltimore Ravens documentary that talked about the 2001 team with Ray Lewis and Shannon Sharp and Saragusa. And Marvin Lewis was a part of it. Brian Billick. Like, it was one of my favorite sports docs I've watched, and I'm a Steelers fan. So shout out to Anthony, does a fantastic job, and hopefully we can have him on the show once again at some point in the future. Before we move on to the Scottie Pippen segment, and then we'll get out of here, I did want to, because it is 6:55 Eastern Standard Time. And we're 5 minutes away, well, technically, I guess, under 5 minutes away from Taylor Swift being on the New Heights podcast. There's been a lot of hype surrounding it with obviously, she's been dating Travis Kelce, and we talked about that, obviously, with Anthony and Jason Kelce hosts the show. Everybody, I think, has seen, it's got over 1 million likes on Instagram. Everyone has seen the Jason Kelce WWE, like, hype up of Taylor Swift joining as a guest. I will have to say, and I put this on my IG stories, maybe it's because I can sometimes be petty, and I have been on this show for better or for worse. Just, can we play the Taylor Swift bite? Because I'm sorry, I love this.
As we all know, you guys have a lot of male sports fans that listen to your podcast. Mm-hmm. And I think we all know that if there's one thing that male sports fans want to see in their spaces and on their screens, it's more of me.
I'm sorry, I love that. And here's the thing, and I've said this since they started dating, since it was weirdly controversial. I'm not even like a Swiftie. I live among Swifties. I have members of my family that are huge Swifties. There's a couple of her songs. I love Shake It Off. I love Shake It Off. It's just probably my favorite song. Again, we're going back to now, gosh, this is 12, 13, 14 years ago. The We Are Never Getting Back Together, which I think is about Jake Gyllenhaal. Like, she's got a couple songs I think are fire. Bad Blood with Kendrick Lamar, the whole bit. But I'm not like a crazy Swiftie like that. What I'm amazed at, though, and I've said this on the show, is, she's shown on screen because she's, I don't know, in the discussion for most famous woman in the world. That's something. She was a part of one of the biggest tours in the history of the music industry. That feels big. And she's attending events for the world's most popular, or at least, America's most popular sports league. Feels important. And her boyfriend's a future first ballot Hall of Famer and a 3-time champion and one of the 3 or 4 greatest titans of all time. Like, that's all something. And man, they show her for 3, 4, 5 seconds, and people lose their minds on social media. They lose their minds. I've seen enough of Taylor Swift. Like, again, had you seen enough of Jack at the Laker games and Drake at the Raptors game? Oh, there was a thing where people got a little bit tired of Drake, but Drake was massaging the coach's shoulders in between plays. Like, that's different. He's literally right there in the action talking to players. Do people panic with my guy Matthew McConaughey? All right. At the Texas games, literally on the sidelines, but the woman can't be up in a booth supporting her boyfriend. And by the way, there was a game when they beat Baltimore in the AFC title game 2 years ago. I think they did a study. They tracked how long they showed her on camera, and Baltimore crab cakes got more airtime than Taylor Swift. Like, I think combined, she's on screen in a 3.5-hour broadcast for about 45 seconds. Folks act like they cut to Taylor Swift at the expense of showing the actual play, which is obviously not true. So when people panic, you can set your clocks to it. It's the Chiefs play on a Friday in Brazil, which Brazil, please get your playing service right, because that Packers-Eagles game a year ago was brutal to watch. Jordan Love got hurt. It was a mess. So let's keep the Chiefs and Chargers safe. But the Chiefs and Chargers play on a Friday night on YouTube in Brazil. Man, they show her the first time. People are just going to absolutely lose their minds. And I honestly just kind of find it amusing. I really do. And I love that Taylor, who has a history, obviously, we know with her music, of getting back at the haters, if you will. I love that some comment said she rage baited some fans into just losing it on the internet. I love it. So again, maybe that's my petty side showing, but I love that on the part of Taylor Swift. I'm curious to see the interview with her and Travis on New Heights. Last topic before we get out of here. Speaking of trolling and being petty and the whole bit. Oh man. So this actually is an old quote, I think from like 6 years ago. This is like from before the show started, but the way the algorithm works and the way sometimes news websites will pull old stuff in off seasons. Like right now, the NBA schedule is coming out this week, but it's the dead time for the NBA. Nobody's talking NBA. It's all NFL preseason. It's all college football top 25. We're at the last 6 weeks of baseball season before the playoffs. Like all of those are at the forefront right now. The NBA obviously will be more of a topic of conversation once we get around Christmas. But I saw this in my social media, and it was recently posted on Basketball Network, which is a website, a few days ago, was Scottie Pippen, the great Scottie Pippen, one of the 50 greatest players of all time. And I want to make sure I preface saying that because so much of today's basketball discussion, especially as it relates to all-time greats, revolves around the legend of Michael Jordan. And I've said, you can make the GOAT case for Jordan without adding, nonsense, acting like he never missed a shot or act like the 6-0 in the finals is the only thing that matters when there are actually other seasons where Jordan individually was actually better than some of those championship years. I know that's hard to believe, but if you actually look at the history, that's the case. And so much of elevating Michael, and you don't even have to do this, so much of elevating Michael involves, okay, let's take a shot at Scottie Pippen. Let's marginalize Scottie Pippen into a glorified role player, which couldn't be further from the truth. Okay, the year Jordan retired in 1994, Scottie Pippen was, I think, top 5 for MVP voting and led the Bulls to 50-plus wins. And if not for an atrocious call in the second round against the New York Knicks, Bulls probably make the finals that year. Don't know if they beat, who won in 94? The Rockets. They probably don't beat the Rockets with Hakeem Olajuwon. That team was on a roll that year. But, let's not shortchange Scottie and minimize Scottie into just being some, oh yeah, he was, people minimize him into being not even Robin or Alfred, but into what is his name? Fox, Lucius Fox from Dark Knight, played by the great Morgan Freeman. And he's integral, and obviously in the Dark Knight film. But people minimize Scottie as if he's Lucius Fox and not, he's Robin. Robin's not in the Dark Knight, but you get the point. So I want to say all that to say, this is not to rip Scottie just to protect Michael Jordan, like just about every shot at Scottie tends to be. With that said, go and put up his quote about the Golden State Warriors dynasty in the 2010s because it's absurd. This is his quote. You say they're on a dynasty run, but I don't see it that way. They picked up probably the best player in the game, Kevin Durant, after they won their first championship. I don't consider that a dynasty run. They went out and got the best player in the game after they won their first championship and after they lost in the finals, defending their first title. He goes on to say, I don't see them as a dynasty. I think bringing Kevin Durant in really changed my respect as to where I rank this team going forward in terms of, a dynasty. So that's what Scottie had to say. So obviously was and still is out of his freaking mind. So let's quickly relitigate that whole process. Okay, so the Golden State Warriors win the title in 2015. In that regular season, they won 67 games, which is one of the 10 greatest records in NBA history for a regular season. Steph Curry was the league MVP. Klay Thompson was an all-star. Draymond Green was second for Defensive Player of the Year. Go on to win the championship. Well, the Cavs got hurt. Listen, I've said this as a Warriors fan. Do I believe that if Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving had been healthy for that 2015 finals, the Warriors would have won? Put me on a lie detector test. I think Cleveland actually wins that series. That's the best finals LeBron's ever played in a loss. Maybe it's the best finals he's ever played, period. Against the Warriors, average, what was it, 34, 35 points a game, 14 rebounds, like crazy stuff. But then with that same logic, the Warriors had all the momentum in 2016, and then the NBA came down with a bogus suspension on Draymond Green. Bogus suspension. And Bron and Kyrie go off. They had the momentum playing at home, and then Bron does what he does, and Kyrie hits the shot in Game 7. So 2016 happens. The Warriors, the defending champions. Steph Curry averages 30 points a game on 50, 40, 90 shooting, leads the league in scoring and in steals. The Warriors win an NBA record 73 games, and they come within a minute away from winning the finals. Oh, they needed Kevin Durant. Again, it took the Cavs completing the greatest comeback in the history of the finals to beat Golden State. Like people act like, oh, Cavs winning in 2017, foregone conclusion. If Kyrie had been there in 2018, foregone conclusion. No question about it. They had to roll over the Warriors. History would not tell you that. It just doesn't. They add Kevin Durant, who they had just beaten in the Western Conference Finals, ironically, after trailing 3-1. Kevin Durant had 0 championships. He had 1 league MVP to Steph's 2. And was no closer winning a championship than the Boston Celtics at that time or the Toronto Raptors with DeMar and Kyle Lowry. So the Warriors add KD. KD makes the Warriors a perennial top 2 at worst championship team to, oh, this very well might be the greatest team of all time. I argue it is. You can make the case for the 01 Lakers, 83 Sixers, 86 Celtics. Feel free. The Warriors, 17 Warriors are in that discussion. Roll to the playoffs. They lose 1 game. 1 game. The whole playoffs. They sweep the whole Western Conference. They lose 1 game to the Cavs in the finals. It actually took the Cavs having the best 3-point shooting game in finals history to do that. Whatever the case may be, 2018. Steph is out for the first 6 games of the playoffs. They gentleman sweep the Spurs in round 1, take out the Pelicans in a gentleman sweep in round 2. Dogfight with Houston, I get it, but they take out the Rockets, a 65-win Rockets team with the MVP James Harden, sweep the Cavs in the finals. And by the way, without Kevin Durant, they then made another finals in 2019. And if Klay Thompson doesn't go down, we could be talking about a team that three-peated. So, respect Scottie Pippen, one of the 50 greatest basketball players of all time. No questions asked. But when he and others, I don't think a lot of folks share the opinion of Scottie of, oh, it's not even a dynasty. Like that's just insane. Oh, you have the best player in the world. So Scottie, that mean the Bulls weren't a dynasty in the 90s? Because Michael Jordan was the best player in the league? Does that mean the Lakers with Shaq and Kobe? Because Shaq was the best player in the league. Does that mean they're not a dynasty? And the Spurs with Tim Duncan, there was a period there where Tim Duncan was the best player in the league. That mean they're not a dynasty? And the Birds Celtics, the Magic Lakers, where Kareem was the best player to start, Magic was the best player to finish, well, they were not dynasties? So, by the way, for the record, love KD. He was not the best player in the league in 2016. He was not. It was Bron, then it was Steph. Steph came off one of the greatest seasons ever. Bron came off the greatest finals ever. KD was 3. KD was great in that 2017 finals. Great in the 18 finals. Steph outplayed him in that finals. But whatever the case may be, KD was not the best player in basketball. So, just, I love how folks try to relitigate and rewrite the history of a franchise. Listen, maybe it was Scottie feels threatened that maybe the Warriors, for a time, it looked like they might actually catch the Bulls in titles. Doesn't look like they're going to do that now. But it's just insanity. And my good friend Barry Grant Jr., the host of the Y'all Even podcast, co-founder of The Grid, shout out to Barry, has a segment he does at the end of his show called Dummy of the Week. He's done it since his show started, and it's fantastic. And if I had the dummy button, I would just absolutely smash it right now, because Scottie, again, this is an old quote, but it's come up recently. Scottie, come on, man. You got a chance to walk this back. You do, but come on. All right, that is all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by. Once again, we appreciate Anthony Salas, content associate at ESPN Films, for stopping by to talk about The Kingdom, the brand new Kansas City Chiefs 6-part docuseries, which covers their 2024 push to become the first team to ever three-peat in the history of the Super Bowl. That premieres tomorrow on Disney Plus and ESPN Plus. The first 2 episodes come out on ESPN starting at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So definitely check those out. Anthony and everybody at ESPN Films worked really hard on it, so I cannot wait to see that. Check out Carving Up Live next Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific Time, right here on YouTube, as well as any and everywhere that you get your favorite podcast. Be sure to go subscribe to the Grid Network. That is GRYD, the Grid Podcast Network, right here on YouTube, as well as any and everywhere that you get your favorite podcast. Hope to see you next Monday. Have a great week and a great weekend, everyone. Stay safe out there. God bless y'all. Peace out. Let's go Red Sox. Let's take out Houston, man. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.